Cathara stared at her reflection in the polished metal mirror. Her purple skin looked pale today, and her large silver eyes held fear she tried hard to hide. The traditional wedding robes felt heavy on her shoulders. Soon she would belong to a human. The thought made her stomach twist with terror. Her mother, Villana, stood behind her arranging the ceremonial headpiece. The older woman's hands shook slightly as she worked. Both of them knew what this marriage meant. Cathara would leave their world forever. She would live among the strange beings called humans, creatures that the Zapirian military whispered about in frightened tones. "Remember what I taught you," her mother said quietly. "Keep your eyes down. Speak only when spoken to. Never argue or show anger. Your job is to survive, daughter." "Nothing else matters," Cathara nodded. She had learned these lessons well by watching her older sisters. Miratha had married Lord Corvin 3 years ago. The last time Cathara saw her, Miratha walked with a limp and flinched whenever anyone moved too quickly. Sexira had married even higher in the noble ranks. She now lived in constant fear, producing child after child, hoping each one would finally please her husband enough to earn her a single day without punishment. This was the way of their people. Females served. Males ruled. It had always been so. But humans were said to be worse than even the cruelest Zapirian lords. The stories that reached their homeworld spoke of warriors who showed no mercy in battle. Humans fought like wild beasts, caring nothing for honor or proper conduct. If they treated their enemies with such violence, how would they treat their wives? "The council chose well," her father, Lord Thexmar, said as he entered the room. His deep voice carried approval, but Cathara heard the worry underneath. "This marriage will bring great benefits to our family. The humans have technology we need, weapons, ships. In return, they get a wife for one of their leaders. A wife. That was all she was. A thing to be traded for weapons and ships. Commander Marcus Chen," her father continued, reading from a datapad. "He is a military leader among the humans. A diplomat as well. The reports say he has fought in many battles and won great victories. He must be very strong, very strong." Cathara's hands began to shake. Strong males in Zapirian society used their strength to control everything around them. They took what they wanted and punished anyone who dared resist. If this Marcus Chen was a great warrior, he would expect complete obedience from his new wife. "Father," Cathara said carefully, "what if I cannot please him? What if I fail in my duties?" Lord Thexamar's expression softened slightly. For just a moment, he looked like the father who used to tell her stories when she was small, before she became old enough to be seen as a burden that needed to be married off. "You are intelligent, daughter, more than most females. Use that intelligence to learn what pleases him quickly. Adapt to his ways. The humans are strange, but they are still males. They want respect and obedience just like our own men." But Cathara had heard other stories too. Stories that the older servants whispered when they thought no one was listening. They said humans were unpredictable, that their emotions ran hot and cold like unstable reactor cores, that they could seem calm one moment and explode into violence the next. The door chimed softly. A guard stepped inside and bowed low to her father. "My lord, the human delegation has arrived. They are ready for the ceremony." Cathara's heart started beating so fast she could hear it in her ears. This was really happening. In a few minutes, she would meet the human who would own her for the rest of her life. The wedding ceremony took place in the great hall of their family estate. Hundreds of nobles filled the seats, all curious to see this historic moment. The first marriage between a Zapirian and a human. Most of them looked excited, as if they were watching an entertainment rather than the moment her freedom ended forever. Cathara kept her eyes on the floor as she walked down the long aisle. Her father held her arm firmly, more to keep her from running than to support her. She could feel hundreds of eyes watching her, but she dared not look up. At the front of the hall, she finally saw him. Commander Marcus Chen was taller than most Zapirians, with dark hair and brown skin. He wore a formal military uniform that was deep blue with gold trim. His posture was straight and confident, the stance of someone used to command. But when Cathara risked a quick glance at his face, she saw something unexpected. He looked as uncomfortable as she felt. His brown eyes met hers for just a second before she quickly looked away. In that brief moment, she had not seen cruelty or hunger for dominance. She had seen something that looked almost like sympathy, but that was impossible. Males, especially powerful ones, did not feel sympathy for females they barely knew. The ceremony proceeded according to ancient Zapirian traditions. Words were spoken in the old language about duty and honor and the binding of two houses. Cathara spoke her vows in a voice so quiet the priest had to ask her to repeat them. Marcus spoke his responses clearly, his voice steady and professional. When it came time for the ritual exchange, Marcus was supposed to place a collar around her neck to symbolize her new status as his property. Instead, he stepped forward and offered her a small box. "This is a human tradition," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "We exchange rings to show our commitment to partnership." Partnership. The word was foreign to her ears. Zapirian marriages were not partnerships. They were conquests. She opened the box with trembling fingers. Inside was a simple silver ring with a small blue stone. It was beautiful, delicate, nothing like the heavy collar she had expected. "May I?" Marcus asked, holding out his hand. She had never been asked permission for anything before. Males took what they wanted. They did not ask. Confused, she held out her shaking hand. Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger with surprising gentleness. Then, to her shock, he offered her another ring from his pocket. This one was larger, clearly meant for him. "In human culture," he explained softly, "both partners wear rings. It shows that we belong to each other equally." Equally. Another impossible word. But she took the ring and slipped it onto his finger because she did not know what else to do. The priest finished the ceremony by declaring them bonded according to both Zapirian and human law. The crowd applauded politely. Cathara felt numb as if she was watching this happen to someone else. Now came the part she dreaded most. Marcus would take her to his ship, and her real life as his property would begin. But as they walked down the aisle together, Marcus did something that made no sense. He offered her his arm, not to drag her along, but as if inviting her to walk beside him as an equal. Cathara glanced around nervously. Several Zapirian nobles were frowning at this display. Proper wives walked behind their husbands, heads down, showing their submission for all to see. "It's all right," Marcus said quietly. "Just walk with me." So she did, though every step felt wrong according to everything she had been taught. The shuttle that would take them to the human diplomatic station waited in the landing bay. As they approached it, Cathara realized she was leaving her homeworld forever. Everything familiar was being left behind. Ahead lay only uncertainty and fear. Marcus paused at the shuttle entrance and turned to face her. For a moment, Cathara thought he might strike her or issue commands about how she should behave on his ship. Instead, he simply said, "I know this is frightening. I know you didn't choose this any more than I did. But I want you to know that you are safe with me. I will never hurt you." Then he stepped back and gestured for her to enter the shuttle first, as if she were an honored guest rather than his new property. Cathara climbed aboard, her mind spinning with confusion. Nothing about this human matched what she had been told to expect. But she had learned long ago that males often started gentle before showing their true nature. She would wait and watch and try to survive whatever came next. The human diplomatic station was bigger than Cathara had imagined. As their shuttle docked, she could see other ships of various designs through the viewing ports. Some were human vessels, sleek and powerful looking. Others belonged to different alien species she did not recognize. Marcus led her through corridors that seemed impossibly clean and bright. Everything was white and silver, with soft lighting that did not hurt her eyes. Zapirian ships were darker, all sharp angles and harsh metals designed to remind everyone aboard of their place in the hierarchy. "These will be our quarters," Marcus said, stopping at a door marked with both human and Zapirian symbols. He placed his hand on a scanner and the door slid open with a soft hiss. Cathara stepped inside and froze. The living space was larger than her entire room back home. There were 2 doors leading off from the main area, which contained comfortable-looking furniture arranged around a large viewing window that showed the stars beyond. Marcus gestured toward the doors. "The bedroom on the left is yours. The one on the right is mine. Each has its own bathroom and storage space." Cathara stared at him in confusion. Her own bedroom? In every Zapirian marriage she knew of, the wife slept wherever her husband allowed. Usually on a small bed in the corner of his room, or sometimes on the floor if she had displeased him. "I do not understand," she said carefully. "Where do you want me to sleep?" "Wherever you're comfortable," Marcus replied. "The left bedroom has better lighting and a nicer view. I thought you might prefer it." This made no sense. Marcus was offering her the better room. In Zapirian culture, the male always took the best of everything while the female made do with scraps. But that is the master bedroom, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes. And you're the lady of the house now. Marcus set down her small bag of belongings near the door to the left bedroom. I'll take the smaller room. We can change the arrangement later if you want something different. If she wanted something different. Again, he was asking for her preference as if her opinions mattered. Cathara moved hesitantly toward the smaller bedroom, assuming she had misunderstood somehow. Surely Marcus meant for her to take the servants' quarters while he claimed the master suite. Cathara. His voice was gentle but firm. The larger room is yours. I meant what I said. She looked up at him, searching his face for signs of anger at her confusion or mockery at her expense. She found neither. He simply looked patient, as if he was willing to wait as long as it took for her to understand. Why? She asked. Because you're my wife, not my prisoner. Because you deserve comfort and space of your own. Marcus moved to the kitchen area and began examining the food supplies. Are you hungry? The station kitchen sent up some meals they thought you might like. Food. She had not eaten since early morning, too nervous about the wedding to keep anything down. But in Zapirian households, wives ate only after their husbands had finished and only what was left over. I can wait, she said automatically. You should eat first. Marcus looked at her with that same patient expression. We can eat together. There's plenty for both of us. Together. Another strange concept. Cathara had never shared a meal with a male as an equal. She had served her father and brothers countless times, standing silently behind them in case they needed anything, but she had never sat at the same table. Marcus began setting out containers of food on the small dining table. The smells were unfamiliar but pleasant. He placed 2 plates, 2 sets of utensils, 2 glasses. Then he pulled out a chair and gestured for her to sit. Please, he said. You must be tired and hungry after the long day. Cathara sat down carefully, expecting this to be some kind of test. Perhaps Marcus wanted to see if she would be greedy, or if she would remember her proper place. She kept her hands folded in her lap, waiting for permission to eat. Marcus sat down across from her and began serving food onto both plates. He gave her generous portions, keeping slightly less for himself. Try this, he said, pointing to something that looked like roasted vegetables. It's from my homeworld. I think you might like it. When she still did not move to eat, Marcus paused. Is something wrong? Is the food not to your liking? I'm waiting for you to begin, Cathara said quietly. Understanding dawned in Marcus's eyes. He set down his utensils and leaned back in his chair. Cathara, I need you to understand something. In human culture, husbands and wives are partners. We share meals, we share decisions, we share responsibilities. You don't need my permission to eat. You don't need my permission for much of anything, really. But I am your wife now, she said, confused. I belong to you. No. Marcus's voice was firm but not harsh. You are my wife, which means you are my partner and companion. You belong to yourself. I belong to myself. We choose to be together. These ideas were so foreign that Cathara felt dizzy trying to process them. Choose to be together? Belong to herself? It was like he was speaking in a language she did not understand, even though he was using words she knew. Marcus seemed to realize she was struggling. Look, I know our cultures are very different. I know this arrangement wasn't your choice. But while you're here, while we're married, I want you to feel safe and comfortable. Can you try to eat something for me? The for me made it feel like a request rather than a command, which somehow made it easier to obey. Cathara picked up her fork and took a small bite of the vegetables. They were delicious, seasoned with spices she had never tasted before. Good? Marcus asked, and when she nodded, he smiled. It was the first genuine smile she had seen from him, and it transformed his entire face. He looked younger, kinder, less like the fearsome warrior she had expected. They ate in relative silence after that. Marcus asked a few polite questions about her family and her homeworld, the kind of small talk that might happen between strangers trying to get to know each other. He did not demand information or interrogate her about her past. When the meal was finished, Cathara automatically stood to clear the table. It was what wives did. They served and cleaned while their husbands rested. You don't have to do that, Marcus said, rising as well. We can clean up together. It is my duty, Cathara protested. It's both our duty. We both ate, we both helped clean up. That's how partnerships work. There was that word again. Partnership. Marcus began collecting plates and utensils, working alongside her as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Kithara found herself stealing glances at him, trying to understand this strange human who shared chores with his wife like a servant. After the kitchen was clean, Marcus showed her how to operate the various systems in their quarters. The lighting could be adjusted. The temperature could be controlled. The entertainment system could access thousands of books, movies, and music from dozens of worlds. "Feel free to use anything you want," he said. "Consider this your home, her home." Another impossible concept. Zapirian wives lived in their husbands' homes and used their husbands' things only with permission. As the evening wore on, Kithara found herself relaxing slightly despite her confusion. Marcus made no demands on her. He did not order her to perform any duties or demonstrate her skills as a wife. He simply treated her like a welcome guest in a shared space. When it came time to sleep, Kithara felt her anxiety return. This was when her real test would begin. This was when Marcus would show his true nature and claim his rights as a husband. But Marcus simply wished her good night and disappeared into the smaller bedroom, closing the door behind him. Kithara stood in the main room for a long time, staring at the closed door. She had expected something. Demands, commands, violence. Perhaps if she failed to please him immediately. Instead, she had been given dinner, treated with courtesy, and left alone to sleep in the finest bedroom she had ever seen. She did not understand humans at all. But as she lay in the incredibly comfortable bed, staring out at the stars through her window, Kithara felt something she had not experienced in years. For the first time since childhood, she felt safe. It would not last, of course. No male was truly safe to be around. But for tonight, in this strange place with this confusing human, she could rest without fear. Tomorrow, she told herself, she would learn what Marcus really wanted from her. Tomorrow the real marriage would begin, but tonight she was safe. 2 weeks passed in a strange routine that Kithara could not quite understand. Each morning Marcus would ask what she wanted for breakfast. Each day he included her in conversations about small matters like what entertainment to watch or how to arrange the furniture. Each evening he said goodnight politely and retired to his own room. He never raised his voice. He never made demands. He never punished her for the small mistakes she made while learning to use human technology. Kithara began to wonder if Marcus was broken somehow. Perhaps human warriors lost their aggressive instincts after too many battles, or perhaps he was waiting for something, building her trust before revealing his true nature. The answer came when a Zapirian delegation arrived at the station for trade negotiations. Kithara felt her stomach drop when she saw the names on the visitor list. Her cousin Vextar would be leading the diplomatic team. Vextar, who had always treated her with particular cruelty because her father outranked his. Vextar, who believed females were barely more intelligent than animals and should be treated accordingly. "You know him?" Marcus asked, noticing her reaction as they prepared for the formal dinner. "He is my cousin," Kithara said quietly. "Lord Vextar of House Korthax. He is very traditional in his views." Marcus studied her face carefully. "Will his presence make you uncomfortable?" The question surprised her. Most males would not care if their wife felt uncomfortable around other men. If anything, they would expect her to endure whatever treatment she received without complaint. "I will manage," she said, which was what she had been taught to say when asked about difficult situations. Marcus looked like he wanted to say something else, but the door chimed to announce the arrival of their guests. The dinner was held in the station's formal dining hall. The Zapirian delegation took their seats according to strict rank order, while the humans seemed to arrange themselves more casually. Kithara noticed that Marcus seated her beside him at the table rather than behind him, where Zapirian wives traditionally stood. Lord Vextar noticed too. His pale blue eyes narrowed when he saw Kithara sitting like an equal among the diplomats. "Cousin," he said in the Zapirian language, his voice carrying disapproval, "I see you have forgotten your proper place already." "I sit where my husband wishes me to sit," Kithara replied carefully, keeping her eyes down. "Does he?" Vextar switched to standard Galactic Common so the humans could understand him. "Commander Chen, I am curious about human customs. Do your females always presume to sit among the males during important discussions?" Marcus's expression remained neutral, but Kithara had learned to read the subtle signs of his moods. The way his jaw tightened slightly meant he was not pleased. My wife sits wherever she chooses, Marcus said evenly. She is my partner in all things. Vextar laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. Partner? How amusing. Tell me, does your partner also make military decisions? Does she negotiate treaties? Or do humans simply enjoy pretending their females are more than they are? Cathara is highly intelligent and well-educated, Marcus replied. I value her insights on many matters. Insights. Vexitar made the word sound like a joke. Cousin, have you been filling your husband's head with foolish ideas? Pretending to knowledge you do not possess? Cathara felt her face burn with shame. She had not spoken much during the negotiations, but when Marcus asked her opinion on certain cultural matters, she had answered honestly. Now Vextar was making it sound like she had been showing off inappropriately. I only answered what was asked of me, she said quietly. You should not have been asked anything, Vextar snapped. Commander Chen, you must forgive my cousin. She was always too forward for her own good. Her father should have beaten such behavior out of her years ago. The table went very quiet. The other humans looked uncomfortable, while the Zapirian delegates nodded in agreement with Vextar's words. In our culture, Marcus said carefully, we believe intelligence should be encouraged, not beaten out of anyone. How wonderfully primitive, Vextar replied. No wonder humans struggle with basic concepts like order and hierarchy. You cannot even control your own females. Marcus's hands were flat on the table now, his knuckles slightly white, but his voice remained level. We don't control our partners because they are not property to be controlled. Everything is property, Commander. Some property simply requires firmer handling than others. Vextar turned to Cathara with a cold smile. Stand behind your husband where you belong, cousin. You embarrass our entire species with this charade. Cathara's training kicked in automatically. She began to rise from her chair, prepared to take her traditional place standing behind Marcus in silent submission. It was easier than fighting, and it would end this horrible conversation. But Marcus's voice stopped her. Stay where you are, Cathara. Vextar's eyes flashed with anger. Do not presume to countermand my instructions to a female of my own blood, human. I'm not countermanding anything, Marcus said quietly. I'm making a request of my wife. Your wife? Vextar stood abruptly. She is Zapirian property temporarily assigned to you for political purposes. She follows Zapirian law and Zapirian customs, not your bizarre human fantasies about equality. The room seemed to hold its breath. Cathara could see the other diplomats watching carefully, ready to intervene if the situation escalated further. Commander Chen, one of the Zapirian delegates said carefully, perhaps it would be best if the female withdrew so we can continue our discussions in a more appropriate atmosphere. Marcus turned to look at Cathara. For a moment, she thought he might agree. It would be simpler for everyone if she just left. It would avoid conflict and save face for both sides. Instead, Marcus asked, would you like to stay for the rest of dinner? It was such a simple question, but it hit Cathara like a physical blow. No one had ever asked what she wanted in a situation like this. Males decided where females should be and females obeyed. I would like to stay, she whispered. Then you'll stay, Marcus said firmly. Vextar's face darkened with rage. This is intolerable. If you cannot manage your female properly, then others must. He moved around the table toward Cathara, his hand raised. Cathara flinched instinctively, recognizing the motion that had preceded countless punishments throughout her life. The blow never came. Marcus was on his feet faster than Cathara had ever seen anyone move. He did not strike Vextar, but suddenly he was standing between them, his body a solid barrier between Vextar and Cathara. You will not touch my wife, Marcus said. His voice was still quiet, but something in it made everyone in the room freeze. Vextar recovered quickly, puffing himself up with indignation. She is property, human. If you cannot control her behavior, others must step in to maintain proper order. She is my partner, Marcus replied. She is my companion. She is my family, and she is under my protection. Protection? Vextar laughed again, but it sounded forced now. From what? Proper discipline? Appropriate guidance? Marcus took a single step forward. Vextar, despite being slightly taller, actually stepped back. From anyone who thinks they have the right to hurt her, Marcus said simply. Human space, human rules. Touch her again, and you'll discover exactly how protective human males can be when someone threatens their family. The word family hit Cathara harder than Vextar's intended blow would have. Marcus had called her family. Not property, not a diplomatic tool. Family. Vextar looked around the room, clearly hoping for support from the other Zapirians, but even they seemed uncomfortable now. Striking another male's wife, even a human male's wife, was considered poor form in diplomatic settings. "This conversation is over," Marcus said, returning to his seat. "Cathara, would you like to continue with dinner, or would you prefer to return to our quarters?" Again, he was asking for her preference, giving her the choice. "I would like to continue," she said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her own voice. Marcus smiled at her, that warm expression that transformed his entire face. "Good, I was hoping you'd stay. I value your perspective on these cultural discussions." As the dinner resumed, Cathara sat in stunned silence. Marcus had defended her, not because she was his property that Vexitar had damaged, but because he believed she deserved protection. He had called her his family and meant it. For the first time since their marriage began, Cathara started to wonder if everything she had been taught about males might be wrong, at least about this male. That night, after the Zapirian delegation had returned to their ship, Cathara found the courage to ask Marcus the question that had been burning in her mind all evening. "Why did you protect me? What do you gain from defending me against my own cousin?" Marcus looked at her with those patient brown eyes that seemed to see straight through her confusion, to the fear underneath. "Because you're worth protecting," he said simply. "Because you deserve respect. Because that's what love should look like. Love." He had said the word so casually, as if it was obvious that love meant protection rather than possession. Cathara went to bed that night with tears in her eyes, but for the first time in her life they were not tears of fear. After the confrontation with Vextar, something changed between Cathara and Marcus. The wall of fear and confusion that had kept her silent began to crack. For the first time, she started to believe that Marcus truly meant what he said about partnership and respect. It began with small things. When Marcus asked her opinion about the decoration of their quarters, Cathara actually answered instead of saying she had no preference. When he suggested they watch a human movie together, she found the courage to ask questions about the cultural references she did not understand. Marcus never seemed annoyed by her questions. Instead, he looked pleased that she was curious about his world. "Tell me about human families," she asked one evening as they shared dinner. It had become their routine to eat together, and Cathara no longer felt strange about sitting at the same table as her husband. Marcus smiled. "What would you like to know?" "Everything," Cathara realized she meant it. "How do human children learn? How do parents choose mates for them? How do wives serve their husbands?" "Well," Marcus said, setting down his fork, "human children learn by asking questions, exploring, making mistakes. Parents guide them, but the goal is to help them become independent thinkers. And marriages. Most humans choose their own partners based on love, shared interests, compatibility. Arranged marriages exist in some cultures, but they're becoming less common. And wives?" Cathara asked the question she had been most afraid to voice. Marcus was quiet for a moment. "In healthy human relationships, spouses serve each other. They support each other's dreams, share responsibilities, make decisions together. No one person is in charge of the other." These concepts still felt foreign, but Cathara was beginning to see evidence of them in Marcus's behavior. He had started asking her to help with small diplomatic tasks, translating cultural nuances that might be missed in formal communications. When she made suggestions, he listened carefully and often implemented her ideas. "Can I show you something?" Marcus asked after dinner one evening. He led her to his personal computer and pulled up files filled with images and videos. "This is my family back on Earth." Cathara stared at the screen in fascination. She saw Marcus with an older man and woman who had similar features. "Your parents?" "Yes, and this is my sister Lynn, with her husband David and their children." In the images, Cathara saw something that shocked her. Marcus's sister stood beside her husband as an equal. In some pictures, she had her arm around him in a gesture of affection and ownership that would have been unthinkable for a Zapirian female. "Your sister commands her husband?" Cathara asked carefully. Marcus laughed. "Neither of them commands the other. They're partners. Look, here's a video from their wedding." He played a recording that showed the ceremony. Both the man and woman spoke vows promising to support and cherish each other. Both wore rings. Both looked happy and excited rather than resigned to their fate. David is a teacher, Marcus explained. Lynn is a doctor. She actually makes more money than he does, but it doesn't matter. They both contribute what they can to their family. A female who made more money than her husband. The idea was so revolutionary that Kethara felt dizzy. What does your father think of this arrangement? She asked. He's proud of both his children. He wants us to be happy and successful, whatever form that takes. Over the following weeks, Marcus shared more of human culture with her. He showed her books written by human females, music composed by women, scientific discoveries made by female researchers. An entire half of humanity contributed to art, science, philosophy, and leadership. Don't Zapirian females contribute to your society? Marcus asked one day. Kethara thought about it. We bear children. We manage households. Some of us create art, but only as hobbies. We are not allowed to hold positions of authority or make important decisions. What a waste, Marcus said quietly. Waste? Half your population's talents and ideas completely ignored. Imagine what your people could accomplish if everyone was allowed to contribute their best abilities. The idea had never occurred to Kethara before. She had always been taught that society functioned best when everyone knew their place and stayed in it. But watching Marcus interact with other humans on the station, she began to see a different model. Human crews included both males and females in positions of authority. She saw female ship captains giving orders to male subordinates. She saw mixed gender teams working together on complex problems. She saw couples making decisions jointly rather than the male dictating terms to the female. Would you like to learn something new? Marcus asked one morning. What do you mean? I have to attend a diplomatic meeting today. It's about trade agreements between 3 different species. The cultural and linguistic challenges are complex. Would you like to observe? You might find it interesting. Kethara stared at him. You want me to attend a diplomatic meeting? Only if you want to. I think you'd be good at this kind of work. You have a gift for understanding different perspectives and finding common ground. A gift. Marcus thought she had a gift for something other than serving and bearing children. The meeting was unlike anything Kethara had ever experienced. She watched Marcus and the other human diplomats navigate complex cultural differences with species she had never encountered before. The Rillians communicated through color changes in their skin. The Vakari insisted on elaborate honor rituals before any discussion could begin. Halfway through the session, one of the human diplomats turned to Marcus with a frustrated expression. I can't figure out why the Rillians keep flashing red when we mention the mining rights. Our translator says it means negative response, but that doesn't fit the context. Marcus glanced at Kethara. What do you think? Kethara felt everyone's eyes on her. A few months ago, she would have remained silent, terrified of speaking incorrectly in front of so many important people. But Marcus's steady confidence in her abilities had begun to change how she saw herself. The red might not be a response to the mining rights themselves, she said carefully. Among my people, we have similar physical reactions to concepts that are culturally problematic. Perhaps they object to how the proposal is structured rather than what it contains. The lead negotiator looked interested. Can you elaborate? If the Rillians value group consensus in decision-making, individual ownership of land might be an offensive concept. You might try framing the mining rights as a cooperative venture rather than an acquisition. The suggestion worked. Once the proposal was restructured to emphasize shared benefits and group participation, the Rillian's skin remained a calm blue-green throughout the discussion. After the meeting, Marcus walked with Kethara back to their quarters. She felt energized in a way she had never experienced before. Her mind had been useful for something important. You were brilliant in there, Marcus said. I noticed patterns. It seemed obvious once I thought about it. That's exactly what good diplomacy is, noticing patterns others miss, understanding the motivations behind surface behaviors. Marcus stopped walking and turned to face her. Kethara, would you be interested in formal training in diplomatic work? Training? There are courses you could take, skills you could develop, if you wanted to make this a career. A career. The word was almost meaningless to Kethara. Zapirian females did not have careers. They had duties assigned to them by their husbands or fathers, but Marcus was offering her something different. He was offering her the chance to become something more than she had ever imagined possible. I would like that very much, she said. That night, As Kithara lay in her comfortable bed looking out at the stars, she realized something had fundamentally changed in how she thought about herself. For the first time in her life, she was not just surviving. She was not just enduring until the next day brought new fears and challenges. For the first time in her life, she was growing. And it was all because a human male had looked at her and seen not property or a burden or a vessel for children, but a person with thoughts and ideas worth hearing. Marcus had given her something she had never known she was missing: the chance to discover who she really was. As sleep took her, Kithara found herself actually looking forward to tomorrow. There would be new things to learn, new ways to contribute, new aspects of herself to explore. She was no longer just Marcus's wife. She was becoming herself. 1 year after their wedding, Kithara stood on the observation deck of Marcus's ship as it approached her homeworld. She barely recognized the frightened, submissive creature who had left this place in tears and terror. The woman reflected in the viewport was confident, educated, and valued for her mind rather than just her biology. "Nervous?" Marcus asked, joining her at the window. "Yes," Kithara admitted, but not the same kind of nervous as before. She had completed her diplomatic training with honors. Marcus had been right about her natural talents. She had a gift for understanding different cultures and finding solutions that satisfied multiple parties. Over the past year, she had assisted with 3 major trade negotiations and 2 peace treaties. More importantly, she had learned to see herself as Marcus saw her, as a person with inherent worth and unlimited potential. "Remember," Marcus said gently, "you don't have to prove anything to anyone back there. You know who you are now." The cultural exchange ceremony was being held to celebrate the first anniversary of human Zapirian diplomatic relations. Kithara and Marcus's marriage had been the foundation of this new alliance, and both governments wanted to showcase its success. But as their shuttle landed in the same bay where they had departed a year ago, Kithara felt the weight of old expectations pressing down on her. The familiar architecture, the formal protocols, the hierarchical arrangements of people, everything reminded her of the life she had escaped. Lord Thexmar, her father, greeted them with typical Zapirian formality, but Kithara noticed his confusion when she walked beside Marcus instead of behind him, when she spoke during the welcome ceremony, instead of remaining silent, when Marcus introduced her as "my partner in diplomacy," rather than simply "my wife." "Daughter," her father said privately when they had a moment alone, "your husband seems very permissive. Are you certain you are fulfilling your proper duties?" "I am fulfilling duties I never knew existed," Kithara replied. "Father, did you know that I have helped negotiate trade agreements worth billions of credits? That my cultural insights have prevented 2 wars? That Marcus values my intelligence as much as my loyalty?" Lord Thexmar looked troubled. "These are not appropriate concerns for a female. Your husband should be managing such matters while you focus on more suitable tasks." "What if the suitable tasks are whatever I'm good at?" Kithara asked. "What if my value comes from my contributions rather than my submission?" Her father did not answer, but she could see the wheels turning in his mind. The trade agreements she had helped negotiate were bringing unprecedented prosperity to Zapirian worlds. The peace treaties were preventing costly wars. Even from a purely practical standpoint, her work was benefiting their people. The real test came during the formal banquet that evening. Kithara sat beside Marcus at the high table, participating in conversations about policy and trade rather than serving silently in the background. She noticed other Zapirian females watching her with expressions ranging from shock to hunger. After the dinner, a group of young women approached her carefully. "Lady Kithara," one of them said in a whisper, "is it true that human males allow their wives to speak during meetings?" "They don't allow it," Kithara corrected gently. "They expect it. They want to hear our thoughts and ideas. But how do you know what to say? How do you avoid making mistakes that anger them?" The questions broke Kithara's heart. These young women were so afraid of displeasing their future husbands that they had never learned to think for themselves. "You start by remembering that your thoughts have value," she said, "that your perspective matters. That making mistakes is how we learn, not something to be punished." "Easy to say when you have a human husband," another girl said bitterly. "Try that with Lord Corvin or Duke Thexus and see how long you survive." Kithara understood their fear, but she also understood something they did not yet see. Change was possible. The moment that would define her return came 3 days later. A young woman named Yanara, Kithara's youngest sister, was brought to her in tears. "They are making me marry Lord Drexavon," Yanara sobbed. "You know what he did to his first wife?" "You know how she died," Kithara did know. Lord Drexavon's first wife had fallen downstairs so many times that eventually she had not gotten back up. Everyone knew the truth, but no one spoke of it openly. "Please," Yanara begged, "you have influence now. You have a powerful husband. Can you stop this?" A year ago, Kithara would have felt helpless. She would have offered comfort but no real solutions. She would have accepted that some things could not be changed, but Marcus had taught her that everything could be changed if you were willing to work for it. "Do you want to come with me to human space?" Kithara asked. "What? Do you want to leave this world and start a new life where your value isn't determined by which male owns you?" Hope flickered in Yanara's eyes, followed quickly by fear. "They would never allow it. Father has already signed the marriage contracts. Let me worry about that," Kithara said. That night she spoke with Marcus about the situation. His response was exactly what she had hoped for. "Of course we'll help her," he said without hesitation. "No one should be forced into an abusive marriage. It could cause diplomatic problems," Kithara warned. "Some things are more important than diplomatic convenience," Marcus replied. "Besides, we're not kidnapping her. We're offering asylum to someone fleeing an abusive situation. That's a fundamental human right." The plan they developed was simple but risky. Yanara would publicly request asylum at the next diplomatic session, with Marcus and Kithara present as witnesses. Under human law, such requests had to be honored. Under Zapirian law, it would be seen as theft of valuable property. The session began normally, with discussions of trade routes and cultural exchange programs. Then Yanara stood up from the observers section. "I formally request asylum under human law," she announced, her voice shaking but clear. "I am being forced into marriage with a male who killed his previous wife, and I fear for my life." The reaction was immediate and explosive. Zapirian lords shouted about honor and theft and proper authority. Human diplomats demanded details about the allegations. Marcus stood calmly and stated that humans were legally obligated to investigate any asylum request thoroughly. Lord Thexmar's face was purple with rage. "Commander Chen, that female is my daughter and my property. She has no right to make such requests." "In human space," Marcus replied firmly, "every sentient being has the right to seek protection from harm." "This is unconscionable," Lord Drexavon roared. "The girl is contracted to me. I have paid her bride price." Marcus's expression went cold. "You paid money for a person? I paid for a wife, as is proper and traditional. And that," Kithara said, standing beside her husband, "is exactly why she needs asylum." The room went silent. Every eye was on Kithara as she faced down the most powerful males of her society. "You see our females as property to be bought and sold," she continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "You see our value only in terms of what we can provide to males. You call this tradition, but I call it slavery." Gasps echoed through the chamber. No Zapirian female had ever spoken such words in public. "I have lived among humans for a year," Kithara said. "I have seen what we could be if we were allowed to grow. I have seen the strength that comes from partnership instead of domination. I have seen what love looks like when it's based on respect instead of fear." She gestured to Marcus. "My husband has never struck me. He has never threatened me. He has never demanded obedience without question. Instead, he has encouraged me to learn, to grow, to contribute my best abilities to our shared life. He has made me stronger, not weaker." "Disgusting," Lord Drexavon spat. "Such weakness destroys the natural order." "No," Kithara replied. "Such strength builds a better order. You think power comes from controlling others, but real power comes from empowering others. You think you are strong because you can make us fear you, but you are actually weak because you need us to be small for you to feel large." She looked around the room at the stunned faces of nobles and diplomats alike. "Humans fight more fiercely than we do," she said. "They build greater technologies. They form stronger alliances. They achieve more in every area we can measure. And they do it all while treating their females as equals. Perhaps that is not coincidence." The silence stretched for long moments. Then unexpectedly applause began. It started with the human delegation, but slowly, hesitantly, some of the younger Zapirian males joined in. Lord Drexavon stormed out in fury, his supporters following. But others remained. their expressions thoughtful. The asylum request was granted, of course. Yenara left for human space that very day, tears of joy rather than fear streaming down her face. But the real victory came in the weeks that followed. Young Zapirian women began making secret inquiries about education opportunities in human space. Progressive noble families started questioning whether arranged marriages truly served their daughters' interests. Change was beginning, slowly but inevitably. On their last night on the homeworld, Cathara stood again at the viewport of their ship, watching the planet turn below them. Marcus joined her as he had a year ago. Any regrets? He asked. Cathara thought about the frightened young woman who had boarded this ship in terror, certain she was doomed to a life of suffering.